Buying a home is generally considered a really sound investment and a smart money move. It is an asset that generally increases in value, and the more that you pay down your mortgage, the more of it you own. That allows you to build wealth that you can use to meet other goals or to pass on a legacy to the next generation. Unfortunately, buying a home is something that's becoming out of reach to more and more Americans as home prices become incredibly expensive. This is even more true if you're a single person trying to buy on your own because you're just working with the income that you can earn. Something that we're hearing a lot more about is platonic cobuying, which is buying a home with people that you aren't in a romantic relationship with. To learn more about this, I reached out to my colleague, Badach Doyle, who has written about this topic and has talked to experts as well as people who have actually co-bought homes themselves. Are people seeking out co-buying just because of the financial benefit, or is something else going on?
Sure. So co-buying isn't really just a financial homeownership hack. It's really a lifestyle shift. So while it's true that pooling your resources with another buyer can improve your debt-to-income ratio, which mortgage lenders look at when they are determining how much to approve you for, it's really going to work the best when you're intentionally making the decision to co-buy because you like the person that you want to go in on this with, and you're really looking to deepen the network of social connections in your life. So if you've heard of the epidemic of loneliness, there's a lot of fascinating research out there about how the fabric of our social connections can really improve our health. Co-buying is another way to make that happen. So while there are financial benefits, it really works best if you're doing it intentionally to strengthen the community in your life.
And so what kinds of, whether it's a pair or a group of people, like what sorts of people or what sorts of relationships are there between the different people that are seeking this out?
So in my research, it's been diverse types of people. So of course, parents and adult children, in-law suites are not exactly a new concept. Other times it's siblings. So siblings have a long history of living together effectively. Maybe there's two siblings that are moving to a coastal city and real estate is a little bit more expensive. And this is a way for them to build equity and get in the game sooner. Sometimes it's roommates who've been, living together for a long time and already have that established connection there. And other times we've seen larger groups co-buying to establish intentional communities as well.
Now, is co-buying like a new thing, or is this something that's coming back around?
That's a great question. So there's not really a gold standard statistic to track platonic co-buyers in the same way that the National Association of Realtors, for example, tracks married buyers, single men, single women, and coupled partners as well. So what we do know is that 5% of first-time home buyers, according to the National Association of Realtors, were in that other category, which is something other than married, single, or partnered. So we can read between the lines a little bit that this is something that's starting to tick up. What's a juicier statistic is that people are staying single longer. And that's data that we know from the Pew Research Center. And we know that folks who are single are earning less than their married or partnered counterparts. So you can kind of see how it would make sense for two single folks or a group of single folks to pool their resources together and to be able to afford homeownership through something such as co-buying.
So if you're someone who might fit into one of those buckets, how do you know if co-buying might be a good idea for you?
So first and foremost, you have to check all of those boxes that you're ready for homeownership in general, right? You're ready to put some roots down, you're financially stable, your credit is in good shape, you have a fully funded emergency fund. But when it comes to co-buying, you have to make sure that you've kind of vetted the other person financially, that you're comfortable talking about the tough stuff, that you both have a shared language of vulnerability, and that you're also able to share, the same forward path for your lifestyle, your values, your goals. You really don't want this to be like posting a flyer at the grocery store looking for a roommate kind of situation, because the financial joint ownership of co-buying really raises the stakes more than a traditional renting roommate situation.
So if you and your friend or you and your friends have decided that this is something that's right for you, what are your next steps? How do you get started?
The next step is to assemble your co-buying squad. So it's important to work with professionals who are supportive of and familiar with the unique needs of co-buyers. The folks that I talked to said, anticipate extra paperwork and more time at every step of the process. And if you've ever purchased a home before, you know that it can be pretty complicated. So co-buying, with that many more opinions, with that many more people involved, it can be complex. So you want to work with a real estate agent. You want to work with attorneys or lenders who are familiar with and supportive of the unique needs of co-buyers. In coastal cities, there are some startups popping up to help co-buyers network with professionals who are aware of their unique needs. But fortunately, there's a lot of resources available online to help you connect with the folks who can make this dream a reality.
Depending on what state you live in, in a regular real estate transaction, you might be required to have a real estate attorney, but that might just be like an extra that you don't have to have. But if you're co-buying, it kind of sounds like it might be smart to get a lawyer involved.
You definitely want to lawyer up. It's important to get all of your agreements in writing. If you've heard of a cohabitation agreement, it's not exclusively for romantic partners. So a cohabitation agreement, a lawyer can help you draft that to make sure that everything's written down, that everybody's familiar with the specific terms of the agreement. So when it comes to co-buying, a lawyer can explain your options for titling the home. The two most common are going to be joint tenancy or tenancy in common. For larger groups, something like an LLC might also be effective, but again, I'm not a lawyer and this is not legal advice. So that's something that you should seek out specifically, especially because regulations and laws are going to vary by state. So a lawyer can help you with your options on how to title the home and be familiar with the laws and regulations that are unique to your state.
That totally makes sense. What financial considerations should people keep in mind? Because unlike with a married or even long-term couple who might jointly share their finances, if you're buying a house with someone, that doesn't necessarily mean you want to pool all your money or maybe even split things up evenly.
I might sound like a broken record, but talk it out, no secrets. You have to get a little bit financially naked with the person that you're buying with. So make sure that you talk through if you're going in 50-50 or if somebody's going to penny up more, if there's a salary difference between the two of you, that you're comfortable about the percentage that you would be contributing toward the cost of living and the cost of your mortgage. So a lawyer can also help you with the titling options for the home. So I'm not a lawyer and this is not legal advice, but it's important to understand the difference between joint tenancy and tenancy in common. So basically, the difference between those two is what percentage that either person would own in the home, as well as what happens to that person's share if they want out of the agreement or if someone were to pass away.
That makes sense. And so that would probably also go into like the equity that you're building over the time that you own the home, or when you are, say you're eventually ready to sell. If you aren't having one person taking over and buying out the other person's share, if you were to sell the home, who gets what profits, right?
Absolutely. And, making sure that you're on the same page for how long you want to stay in the home is an important part too. So is this a 5 or 10-year plan, or is this kind of a forever home, kind of putting roots down for some time? So again, talk it through, no surprises, really want to make sure that everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, it seems like open communication is just an incredibly important part of this.
You can't have any secrets, and it's important to put it in writing.
Even if you do want to have separate kitchens and separate entries.
Hey, I'm a little partial to my cheese grater, Everybody's got a favorite.
Right. So some things you got to share, some things you do not want to share.
Exactly.
What kinds of properties make the most sense for co-buyers?
So when you're looking for a property, it really comes down to your personal preference for shared space versus personal space. So if you're into shared space, something like a large Victorian home with a lot of bedrooms might work. If everybody in the arrangement would prefer a little bit more privacy, something like a duplex or a split level would give each person or each person in the group their own separate living space. So another thing to think through is, the number of kitchens. Do you want a big shared kitchen for everyone, or do you want 2 separate kitchens, as in a duplex kind of situation? You can always renovate. I've heard of folks renovating and adding separate kitchens. And that's something that, can add value to the home also. when it comes time to sell down the line. So houses with finished basements also tend to work well for co-buyers, again, for that kind of privacy, separate living space. But keep an open mind. Remember that you can do renovations and have fun on the search.
It seems like separate entrances could also be something that people might want, depending on, again, who you're living with, what your relationship is to that person. And like you said, kitchens, of course, make sense too. With all of this going on, what do you do if something goes wrong? Like, what kind of scenarios should people try to anticipate and, make sure hopefully isn't going to happen to them?
So co-buying is almost like running a mini business together. Of course, there's a financial commitment, but you're also emotionally invested too. So scenario planning, especially through the guidance of a mediator or someone like a financial therapist or a counselor, and getting all of that in writing so that if there are those inevitable curveballs down the line, that nobody's surprised with what everyone agreed to do beforehand. So some scenarios that could rock the boat might be someone gets married or partners up, or someone is ready to grow their family and have children. There's also financial considerations like, what if somebody loses their job? Or what if somebody wants to take a financial risk and start their own business maybe? So planning through all of those scenarios ahead of time can reduce any drama later on. And getting those all in writing is smart to do as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, these do not sound like the kind of thing that you want to have on a handshake or just based on everyone's like separate memory of what you agreed to 5 years ago.
And it's also about talking through your value systems too. So what would you do if someone broke into the house? Or what would you do if there was an expensive, unexpected repair? So talking through those kinds of things too can make the agreement healthy and strong.
Mm-hmm. That definitely makes sense. So for people who are watching this and are thinking, this is something I really want to look into, do you have any advice for them of like actions they might take or stuff they might do just to get started?
Definitely seek out legal advice. That's always going to be really smart so that there's no surprises. Work with professionals who are familiar with and supportive of the situation. And also, if this is something that your heart is telling you that you want to do, don't underestimate the power of the company you keep. There's a lot of research out there that says that the communities and the people that we surround ourselves with can lead to long-term health and happiness. So if this is traditional or non-traditional, that really kind of depends on who you ask. But if your heart is telling you to seek out co-buying and that establishing this community and making this commitment is going to make your life richer, anticipate a little more paperwork, but it could be a very fulfilling option.
Wow. Thanks so much, Abby. That's fantastic. And it's really interesting to learn that something that could be a smart money move that could help you become a homeowner is something that could also truly enrich your life.
Absolutely.
I'm Kate Wood, and I write about mortgages and home buying for NerdWallet. If you're curious how much house you might be able to afford by yourself or with other people, check out our home affordability calculator. And while you're here, like this video and subscribe to our channel for more.